Welcome to the second episode in this Livewire series, Paulship, that looks at leadership that achieves its goals. In the first episode, we looked exactly at that, at goal setting. We looked at the importance of it, some of the principles, and then some specifics. And hopefully that maybe inspired you or made you think through some of your goals. One of the things I want to say at the beginning of this, I may have said it last time, is that for me, a key is really not so much targets, but a theme. The thing I love about having a theme for my vision is it's all-encompassing. Wherever I am, I still have vision. It doesn't depend on a project or a number. It doesn't mean that, when something's going well, I'm excited about my vision, but at other times, I've just forgotten my vision. When it's a theme of your life, it's everywhere you go. So for me, my vision is not an organisation. It's not school's work. My vision is to make missionaries, and I can do that at home, I can do it on my street, I can do it wherever I go. So as we're thinking about goals and as we're thinking about people who really achieved some incredible things, for me, Paul the Apostle was probably the second most influential person who ever walked the planet aside from Jesus. Even as you look at this list of some of the books that he wrote, and you actually think about the impact those books have had on the way not only Christianity has been shaped, but the Western world and much of other parts of the world as well. Some of those words, some of the things that he's said inspired so many great people to do so many great things. Paul, for me, is a person who really played to his strengths, and we see this by contrasting two verses. Let me read the first one to you. Acts chapter 23. Then Paul, knowing that some of them were Sadducees and the other Pharisees, called out in the Sanhedrin, "My brothers, I am a Pharisee, descended from Pharisees. I stand on trial because of the hope of the resurrection of the dead." Much of Paul's ministry was, of course, speaking to Jews, and when he spoke to Jews, he played on this strength, his background, his kind of religious, almost aristocracy, you could say. But then sometimes he's in totally different situations. Let me read this other verse to you. This is from earlier on in Acts chapter 16. But Paul said to the officers, "They beat us publicly without a trial, even though we are Roman citizens, and threw us into prison. And now, do they want to get rid of us quietly? No, let them come themselves and escort us out." The officers reported this to the magistrates, and when they heard that Peter and Silas were Roman citizens, they were alarmed. Paul, in a different situation, played the "I'm a Roman citizen" card. It wouldn't play well in one situation, but it played really well elsewhere. And as we go through this, you're going to see how Paul really played to his strengths. He knew who he was, he knew what advantages he had, and he used them for the sake of the kingdom of God. So when we think about our strengths, we need to understand what our strengths actually are. Now, normally this session, this Livewire, is based on one-to-one mentoring, where I really work with somebody and work through their individual strengths. I can't do this because I don't know who's watching this. So I'm currently in the process of creating some teaching called Life Shapes about team and how we work together and how we interact with each other. So for now, I'm just going to get you to do the Life Shape test. You're going to see a worksheet in front of you, and the first thing I'd like you to do is fill in that worksheet and discover whether you are a square or a circle or a triangle or a star. Then what I'd like you to do, once you've filled in the test, is I'd like you to look at the description, the simple description of each of those different personality types, and just get to know yourself. So there may be different types of strengths, spiritual strengths, different gifts that you have, but for the sake of purposes today, I want you to think about the strengths outlined after you've done that test. So take some time, look at the test, and then just read through the different answers, decide whether or not the description is true of you, and discuss that in your team. So as we go through how we play to our strengths, we have an idea of some of the strengths that we can put into practice. Please just spend 10 minutes just looking at this quick appraisal and discussing what you find about yourself. Hopefully that was helpful to you. I'm sure many of you have done different personality tests. They seem to come up all the time now with social media. But there's some depth and science behind this particular one, and hopefully it's been interesting to you at least. So I was thinking about this. How do I actually talk about playing to your strengths? And I thought I might use an example of the National Directors of PAYS. Most of the National Directors of PAYS are very successful and they see PAYS grow. Some go through periods where they're struggling for a bit, and one or two have really struggled over the years. Over the last 20 years, it's been interesting to watch because essentially every National Director has the exact same resources. Every National Director is working to pretty much the same program and system, so it's not too difficult to compare. Now, I don't use that to get them to compete against each other, but it's interesting for me to look because I notice principles. And I'm going to look at some of the what's of playing to your strength. I'm going to mention 7 things that I see in successful National Directors, those who are seeing things grow and move forward, compared to people who maybe not, either for a season or long term, seeing much success. So I'm going to go through each one and then I'm going to give you a tip according to how do you play to your strengths. Because for me, PAYS grows or struggles in a nation pretty much based on how much the National Director really goes for it and really plays to their strengths. So I think this will be helpful to you. Let's look at the first one. Communication is the first thing I notice between a National Director or their team that's succeeding and one that isn't. Good leaders always communicate a lot, and they talk about things not just when it's going wrong. So I noticed this in a couple of ways. Good leaders on PAYS, what they do, good National Directors, is they often are talking to me, getting advice, bouncing ideas off me. Ones that succeed are talking to me through the good times and the bad times. Ones that struggle, I don't tend to hear from them very much, apart from when I contact them, unless things are going wrong. I would encourage you not to be like that. Another connection to communication is almost every single time on a PAYS team that's struggling or a nation that's struggling, you always find that the standard communication lines have broken down. So for instance, with PAYS, our leaders mentor the people that they're leading once a month. I don't think in 20 years I've ever gone to a team that's been struggling, I've had to kind of problem solve and not found that that system has broken down. It always has. So what happens is we don't communicate sometimes until we have problems or we need to fix things. Playing to your strengths means that that's in play before anything else. So how does this relate to you and playing to your strengths? Well, I have this little saying that when leadership leaves a communication gap, it always gets filled with nonsense. So if you don't let people know what your strength is, if you don't volunteer your strength, you're quite possibly going to be given opportunities that actually you have to use your weaknesses or you're weak in. So great ideas, if you want to play to your strength, are to volunteer. Get in there early, suggest things you can do for your leaders, suggest things you can do to move things forward as a pioneer, playing to your strengths rather than reacting and having to use or do things that actually kind of take advantage of your weaknesses. I'm going to encourage you, communication is really important. Let people know what you're strong at. Let people know the things that you're good at. Don't wait to be chosen. volunteer. Key if you're going to play to your strengths. The second comparison that I've noticed is to do with the system. What I've noticed is that those leaders that struggle sometimes, especially national directors, are kind of just managing things, waiting for their big break, waiting for some organisation to give them this opportunity, waiting for somebody to give them a platform. The best leaders, those who move pace forward, go out and create opportunities. They're not waiting for anybody to give them a big break. Now, I suffered from this when I was a little bit younger, because I thought, well, Pace is such a great idea, then surely people are going to give us opportunity, give us platform, give us resources. Sadly, not everybody's motivated in the same way. And even though I probably still think today that people should just get behind Pace more than they do, because it makes so much sense, I've realised that people are motivated by different things. So the other thing I noticed is this, is that sometimes I've waited for the big break that's never happened, so I've got on and done it myself, and the benefit of that has been that I've been able to play to my strength. See, if you're waiting for somebody to give you a break, they're going to probably dictate what that looks like. But if you make things happen, you're probably going to do it according to your strength. That's been really, really key for me. So my tip, if you like, is this. Don't wait for the system, wherever that might be, to give you your big break. Play to your strengths, and you just might reinvent the system yourself. A third principle I've noticed that's been particularly interesting is how much a successful national director uses me. There's a few different ways that on Pace that people can use me. One of them, for instance, is when I come to the country or the nation to visit and to see how things are going and to train. They see the opportunity of using me and getting me out there and booking me different opportunities where I can kind of share the vision of Pace. Good leaders don't become over familiar with their leader. They don't forget the impact that their leaders had on them and the impact that their leader can have on other people. Struggling leaders do. They become inward looking, and when you come to town, if you like, all they're really looking for is for you to help them and maybe tell people why they should listen to them and stuff like that. But really good leaders, what they're doing is thinking, at least with me, how can I get Paul out there? How can I use Paul to create opportunities? My tip for you, based as I see that idea and that principle, would be this. Don't take your leader for granted. Ask them to create opportunities for you to play to your strengths. Or at the very least, ask them for opportunities to practice your strengths. Don't take your leader for granted. Use your leader because they're possibly the best person to create opportunities for you. Paul was excellent at using his resources. If you notice, actually one of the things I noticed a while back was Paul copies Jesus in many, many different things. He adopts his spread, spot, stay, send mission strategy. He teaches in synagogues. He teaches outside of the synagogues, which we'll mention later on. He's rabbinic. He's a teacher. He does great acts. He does some amazing things supernaturally. What's interesting is that he never tells a parable as far as we know. So you look at the Gospels and they're full of parables. Why? My theory is this, is that people became his parables. When Paul's looking for examples, he points to people. He highlights people. Paul really understands, if you like, the question that God asked Moses, what is in your hand? Let me encourage you. If you've got a gift, don't wait to be qualified in that gift. Don't wait for some kind of certificate. Use whatever gift you've got. Use that resource. Acknowledge it. As small as it might be, acknowledge that resource and put it into practice. Your strengths are like muscles. Some of us are born with weak muscles. Some of us are born with just naturally strong, muscly people. Either way, if you exercise those muscles, they're going to grow. I go to a gym. I know you can't tell, but I do. And in that gym, you see people who you can just tell by their bodies that they weren't probably very strong naturally. They've got very thin faces, kind of spindly legs, but their bodies are massive. And then you see these other guys who are walking around who obviously were quite stocky and strong, but haven't exercised quite as much. Let me encourage you, don't wait to be qualified. Don't wait for it to be acknowledged. Don't wait for somebody to approve your strength. If you've got opportunities, use whatever's in your hand. All ministry or a business, a church, a team have a pulse. And I really want to encourage you to keep your finger on the pulse. Don't abdicate your weaknesses to only concentrate on your strengths. This is a major mistake that people make. In the Bible, Jesus talks about this idea of hospitality and greeting people. And he says, if you only greet your friends, are you any different from the pagans? And I want to talk about that a little bit later on in a little bit more detail. What you find with Paul, as we'll see later on, is he doesn't simply do the things he likes to do. And I think what happens is we sometimes play too much to our strengths in that we totally abdicate our weaknesses. We just decide not to do those things. Well, you're only going to be as strong really as your weaknesses. You know, weaknesses can hold you back. We can have these Achilles heels. And no matter how great we are at things, if we're struggling in one area, if we don't manage that, which we'll look at next time in the final episode, then we're going to struggle. So my tip is this, when it comes to playing to your strengths, don't promote yourself to the level of incompetence. Don't get into a situation where all you're doing are the things you like to do, and you find that because you don't do the things that you're not strong at, actually you never really get a chance to play to your strengths because you can be constantly pulled back to deal with issues. Strategy is extremely important when it comes to playing to your strengths. Working out what gives the best return is just vital to being a good leader. And I would say this is one of the big things that I notice is that some of our leaders who are really successful, who are growing Pace, they're still managing their weaknesses, but they're putting more and more strength, not so much just doing the things they like to do, but they're leveraging that for the most results. I'll give you an example from my life, but first of all, let me just say about Paul. Paul goes to places where he can put his strength into action. If you notice, he's very strategic of which countries, or which cities he goes to. When he goes to Corinth, it's on an isthmus. We mentioned this, I think, last time, saying that he didn't have to go to the world came through Corinth. What's interesting about Paul is that many scholars would say that Paul concentrated on the God-fearers. The God-fearers were the people who worshipped God, the true God, but were not Jews. And he concentrated much on that fringe, if you like, those who weren't fully Jewish, but it was a huge fringe, and he concentrated a lot of his ministry on them. He knew how to leverage his gift. For me, what that means, and for you, is it's taking a backward step and saying, okay, how do I use my gift to have the most benefit? So for instance, for me, what I've learned is I have a couple of different gifts. I'm quite good at organising, I'm quite good at teaching, and I have quite a few weaknesses. What I've noticed though, because somebody helped me take a step back and ask the question, why do people get involved with Pace? Why do people support Pace financially? Why do people join Pace? And what I've noticed is at a higher level, kind of more older, mature people who join us as directors, for instance, or people who give us, a large amounts of finances, those people actually don't get involved with Pace usually simply because of what Pace is doing. They get involved because of our teaching, which is odd to me, but it's true. And we were able to track that. We took step back and we tracked that, and we realised that. So what I've done now is right now this week I spent half my week writing books, because when we write books and we get them out and people get the teaching, then people really get on board. And again, my good leaders what they tend to do is they tend to give away. They invest in resources, they give those things away because they've realized that they're the things that get a lot of leverage. They're the things that produce a lot of fruit. So for you, let me encourage you, take a step back. Don't allow your circumstances to dictate where you play your strengths. A lot of this is about being proactive. You take a step back first and decide, where can I put my strengths into action that will give me the most benefit? And sometimes that's by stepping back and just analysing, what fruit have you seen in the last year, in the last 2 years? Where do you see people get involved? It may not be where you would expect. That was the big aha moment for me. I just presumed people would get involved because of the great work that Pays does, but actually it turns out to be the teaching. So I took a sidestep and put most of my energy into teaching and books and getting that out there. My last tip is invest. What I've noticed is that the best leaders take a sacrifice maybe of their own income so that they can invest in the best people, not the cheapest people. Sometimes as leaders we notice that people, we want to keep X amount of money, we want to play it safe, so we let some of the better leaders go past and we find the people that we can afford. I would encourage you to make sacrifices to invest in your gift, whatever your gift is. For me, probably my strongest gift is communication, whether that's organizational communication, whether that's teaching. So I put a high level of investment into communication. I invest in the latest technology. I'm really interested in social media. I invest in the thing that's going to move me forward. Dean O'Gilly, who's recording this right now, said to me just before, if you don't invest in your own gifts, nobody else is going to invest in them for you. So I want to encourage you to invest in your gift. It's very, very important. Buy books, work out what you're good at, read about it, watch videos on it, buy any technology that will help you in that gift, and sacrifice in other areas to invest in your gift. Okay, let's look at our workshop. I've used this workshop before in another Livewire series, but I think it's so vital in this one to help us think. So as you look at this picture, a New York skyscraper, you see people living at a high level of faith and skill, yet doing something very natural to them that inspires others. So please study the photo and then ask yourself this question. What can you see yourself doing in the future in context of your strength, using your gifts at such a high level that they may seem very scary to others, but inspire them to use their strengths to also achieve higher goals? Please take a look at the photo and then look back at what the Life Shapes test said to you, because it'll give us common language when you're talking with people watching Livewire together. And think, what could I do using my gift? What can I achieve? What can I be doing that's natural to me? It's a gift, it's something I do, but I do it to such a higher level that it will inspire other people to use their different gifts to inspire to a higher level as well. Just take time. I think it's a great photograph for us to think about. Some people have said it's a bit of an urban myth that this photo was actually photoshopped. It wasn't. I watched a documentary a while back and it even tells you who was on those structures. It's a fascinating documentary. I'd encourage you to look at it sometime. But for now, let's be inspired to think, playing to my strengths, how high could I really go? What would it look like? What kind of things would I be doing? Please take, again, 10 minutes to think about the photo and maybe help yourself thinking, what goals could I achieve playing to my strengths? Okay, hopefully that was helpful and perhaps inspiring. Let me think now about how we use our gifts. I've given you 7 principles, if you like, things you can actually do. I want to talk about something here that I think really differentiates between somebody who doesn't play to their strengths well because they don't really understand what that should look like. Now, I'm going to say something here which may be controversial and may not fit what a lot of people preach. I'm going to argue my case because when I hear what people preach, which I'm going to mention to you in a minute, my mind constantly goes back to Paul the Apostle, whose life I think disproves it entirely. So let me first read a passage that I think is just one of many passages you could see this in Paul's life. We're going to read from Acts chapter 14, and I'm going to start at verse 19. Then some Jews came from Antioch and Iconium and won the crowd over. They stoned Paul and dragged him outside the city, thinking he was dead. But after the disciples had gathered around him, he got up and went back into the city. The next day he and Barnabas left for Derbe. They preached the gospel in that city and won a large number of disciples. They returned then to Lystra, Iconium and Antioch, strengthening the disciples and encouraging them to remain true to the faith. We must go through many hardships to enter the kingdom of God, they said. Okay, let me first talk about what is often said. What's often said is, find your strength and concentrate on that. If you don't enjoy doing it, then you shouldn't be doing it. Some people would almost say that enjoying something is, if you like, a major hint towards the fact that that's what God's calling you to do. I think that's a part truth, and it actually causes a major problem. Because I think what happens is most of us think, well, if I'm not enjoying it, it can't be my gift. I want to suggest something different. I want to suggest this. I want to suggest that a real calling comes when you play to your strengths that you enjoy, but you also do those things that you don't enjoy, but actually you're quite good at. There are things I do on a daily basis, like mentoring people, that I actually don't enjoy. I find one-to-one mentoring incredibly draining, I should say. I just really struggle with it. I don't like it when it comes up on my diary. No matter how great the person is I'm going to be mentoring, my heart sinks a little bit. Put me on a stage in front of people and that gets my blood pumping. I really enjoy doing that. If I was only to do the things I like to do, again, how different would I be from the pagans? How different would I be from anybody in the world? Most people in the world want to do the thing that they enjoy doing. What marks us out is this. It is this second gift that separates those in it for themselves and those in it for the kingdom. I think it is. I think it's this second gift that makes the difference. So I really want to encourage you as you think about what we're going to do next, which is you're going to think about how do I play to my strengths more and list some very practical things you can do. When I ask you to do this exercise, I want you to challenge yourself, not simply to put down on that list the things you enjoy doing, but also put down the things that you suspect actually you can do quite well, even though you don't enjoy doing them. I'll be honest, if I just did what I like doing, I'd buy a little cottage somewhere, a little beach hut somewhere near the sea, and I would just write and travel and speak. That's all I like to do out of my job. Writing, travelling, speaking, not dealing with people, not dealing with issues. Unfortunately, I'm quite good at organising. I'm quite good at problem solving. And it's when these two things clash that I think I see a more unique gift. If everybody did the one thing they like to do, then if you think about it, there won't be that many gifts around. But it's the combination of 2 or 3 more different gifts that make us distinctive and make us unique. So let me challenge you, don't just do the things you enjoy doing, but also do the things you're good at that you don't enjoy doing, that other people notice in you. With that final bit of advice, let's look at our final workshop. Please first take a look at the example sheet. Choose 2 of your strengths that you notice. Write down the name of the first destination that you came up with in the first session, the first episode of this series. So you should have at the end on the right hand side of your sheet a name. Basically it's the place you want to get to next. It's your next major goal, if you like. Then do this. On one of the lines, decide how much of that particular strength is in play and then draw box A to represent it. Then write in that box what aspects of that strength you are currently pursuing and using. Only spend a minute on this box, however. The rest of the space, box B, represents what needs doing in order for your strength, that particular strength, to be 100% in play. So then write in that box the practical things you need to start doing so that you are using that strength to its fullest. Try to make your thoughts concise, practical and detailed. So there are 5 lines on the sheet, just pick 2. Just name, if you like, what your strength would be and ask yourself, how much am I using this strength already? Make that a short part of what you do. Write a couple of things you notice in box A. In box B is really what's going to help you. Writing things that you're not currently doing that you could do. They're either things you enjoy doing or things you may not enjoy doing but people have noticed that are good, that you're good at. Now when I say you're good at them, it may be you're good at them compared to everybody else on the team. In other situations, you may not need to do them because they're better people. But right now, you might be the best person on the team in that particular area. So sometimes our strengths are relative to those we're mixed with. You know, in some circles, I'm quite good at media, but if I was surrounded by great media people, it wouldn't be a strength. But with 2 or 3 people I work with, it is a strength. You know, I have an eye for design. So off you go, do that workshop. Hopefully these principles and thoughts have been helpful to you. Next episode, we're going to look at how you manage your weaknesses because that's also important. Bye.